Elizabeth Sparkle is a popular American TV host, known for doing aerobics in the mornings on national television for over 20 years. She is so hardworking that she even works on the set on her 50th birthday. Later, Elizabeth accidentally hears that Harvey, her producer, intends to replace the host with a young and attractive girl in order to update the show and increase its ratings. Elizabeth reminds the producer that she is experienced and does an excellent job, but he replies that she should understand everything. The program needs young, fresh blood. On the way home, Elizabeth, looking at her image on a billboard, gets into an accident, but fortunately gets only scratches. In the hospital, she cries because if her career is over, what should she do next? A young doctor's assistant examines Elizabeth and says that she is a suitable candidate, but does not specify for what exactly. Later, Elizabeth finds a flash drive labeled "Substance" in her coat pocket, which contains information about a new drug that can create a better version of any human. Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. Just one injection will unlock the DNA and start the process of cell division, which will create a new version. By performing simple manipulations with injections, it will be possible to live a week as an ideal version and a week in their own body. The only thing that is important to remember, both versions are one whole. Elizabeth throws the flash drive in the trash and goes to a bar. Having drunk a lot, she sees how young girls get a lot of male attention, and Elizabeth becomes sad. She orders the substance and picks up the package in a secret place. At home, she studies the instructions. First, she needs to use a disposable activator to create a copy, then use a stabilizer syringe once a day to extract a dose of liquid from the original body and inject it into the copy to maintain vitality. And the third device is a switch in the form of a two-way tube, with the help of which control and consciousness will pass from one body to another. The main thing that Elizabeth should remember is that consciousness will be shared with the copy and it needs to switch the bodies every 7 days, without exceptions and delays. Elizabeth uses the activator and after a few seconds loses consciousness. Her back increases, the skin bursts and a rapidly growing embryo crawls out of it. Consciousness passes into the body of a newborn, but already formed girl. While Elizabeth's body lies motionless on the floor, the copy approaches the mirror and does not believe her eyes. Now she is young, fit and beautiful. She calls herself Sue, which is more suitable for a young girl. It hurts her to look at Elizabeth's back, so the first thing Sue does is stitch up this huge wound. By evening, Sue feels bad, her nose is bleeding. She remembers about the stabilizer, takes a week's worth of liquid from Elizabeth and injects herself with one portion. Her health improves dramatically. In the morning, she does gymnastics and sees a newspaper with an advertisement for a casting. A national TV channel is looking for a new aerobics presenter. Sue arrives at the studio and easily wins the casting. Sue tells producer Harvey that she can only work every other week because she needs to take care of her sick mother. Harvey agrees and immediately launches an advertising campaign for an updated fitness show. After an exhausting week of rehearsals and photo shoots, Sue returns home and connects the switch to Elizabeth. Sue passes out, then Elizabeth wakes up with a terrible pain in her back and the first thing she does is go to the kitchen, because she is very hungry. She takes a calendar and marks her week with crosses and signs the happy days in the copy's body as Sue. All week Elizabeth does not go outside, eats a lot and watches TV, because real life for her does not happen in this body. When Sue falls asleep, the first thing she realizes is that she doesn't like seeing Elizabeth's body in the bathroom. It reminds her of old age, and she can't invite guests into the house. Sue orders tools, materials, and builds a secret room in the bathroom, where she can put Elizabeth and everything connected with her double life. The pilot episode of the show, performed by Sue, breaks viewing records and she quickly becomes a celebrity. During the day, she works on the set and at night, she actively relaxes. On the 7th day of the cycle, Sue returns home drunk late at night with an attractive guy, when suddenly her nose starts bleeding, which means that the stabilizing fluid in her body has run out. Sue ignores the rule of changing the body on time and pumps out the 8th dose of fluid from Elizabeth's body for herself. Sue returns to the guy and enjoys intimacy with him for a couple more hours. In the morning, Sue switches and Elizabeth wakes up. She is horrified because her index finger has turned black and wrinkled. It doesn't wash off with water, so Elizabeth calls the substance manager to order a restoration procedure. However, the manager says that any excess dose of liquid will irreversibly worsen the original body. He demands that the balance be respected and the switching rules be followed to avoid future problems. When Elizabeth tries to explain that it was Sue who broke the rule, but not her, the manager reminds her that there is no I and she, the original and the copy are one whole, because one consciousness is indivisible. Elizabeth continues to be angry with Sue and decides to prove that she can still be bright and joyful in her own body, so she arranges a meeting with an old friend. Getting ready for a restaurant, Elizabeth tries to go outside again and again, but to no avail. She sees young Sue everywhere, on a billboard, in a magazine, and on TV. This image brings Elizabeth back to the bathroom, where she tries again and again to put on makeup, so as to look better than 25-year-old Sue. After several attempts, Elizabeth becomes apathetic and stays home alone. She eats fatty foods and sweets to relieve her despair. The next day, the film crew notices that Sue has a large tumor on the video for 1 second. In the dressing room, she takes a chicken leg out from under her stomach skin and is horrified. It was a nightmare, but in the morning, Sue finds a lot of unhealthy food near the TV and worries that one day the dream may become reality. Sue complains to the substance manager that Elizabeth is ruining her life, but he repeats that they are one and there is no I and she. Later, Harvey tells Sue that her ratings are off the charts, so the producer offers the girl to become the host of the New Year's show. This will require 3 weeks of daily rehearsals, and Sue cannot miss such a chance. She tells Elizabeth's sleeping body about her successes and continues to pump the liquid from her. After 3 weeks, Sue switches and Elizabeth wakes up. She screams in horror because now more than half of her body has become 40 years older. Enraged, Elizabeth calls the manager to complain about Sue. The selfish, like-sucking Sue. The manager asks if Elizabeth wants to end the experiment and get rid of Sue. Then Elizabeth will live in one original body, but all the changes she received will stay with her. Elizabeth refuses because now she has almost nothing to lose, and the opportunity to be Sue is so captivating and tempting. In the evening, Elizabeth eats chicken legs and watches a talk show with Sue. The host says that her appearance ended the era of fitness with Elizabeth Sparkle and asks if Sue was a fan of the morning editions of her predecessor. Sue calls aerobics with Elizabeth Jurassic Fitness. Laughter and applause are heard in the studio, and Elizabeth has a hysterical fit. Seized by uncontrollable rage, Elizabeth throws food around the apartment and then covers the window with newspapers so as not to see a billboard with an image of Sue. Elizabeth's week is over, and in the morning, Sue doesn't recognize her apartment. The walls are smeared with food, there is a stench and a mess around. She screams that Elizabeth should learn to control herself, but Sue has no way to influence her. Therefore, the girl decides not to switch to Elizabeth anymore and enjoy life, pumping fluid from the body of an unbearable old woman. 3 months later, a happy Sue looks at a new billboard with her image, because tomorrow she will be the host of the New Year's show. Sue is hugged by a man and she goes to the bathroom to take a stabilizer. 3 months of fluid withdrawals from Elizabeth did not pass without consequences. The stabilizing fluid in her body has completely run out. Sue feels an approaching attack, so calls the substance manager, and he says that in order to create a new fluid, she needs to become Elizabeth again and live her week-long cycle, because it is for the restoration of fluid that the switches are needed. Sue has a live broadcast of the New Year's show tomorrow, and she does not want to ruin her career, but there are no other options, and she crawls to Elizabeth only because of the fear of death. Elizabeth, who has come to, approaches the mirror and freezes from what she sees. Now she is a bald old woman with a large hump, barely resembling a person. Elizabeth is filled with extreme rage, so she first throws the man out of the apartment with her appearance only, and calls the manager to order the final set, to terminate the substance program. Later, Elizabeth unpacks the box and sees a black liquid with the inscription termination. She inserts a syringe into Sue and begins to inject poison, when suddenly she hears warning voices that Elizabeth will be left alone. Dreams of becoming young and famous again act on Elizabeth like a drug, so they prevent her from pressing the syringe to the very end. Elizabeth hates herself and says that she cannot miss today's show. She activates the switch and Sue wakes up. Elizabeth is scared because she did not lose consciousness, but remains in the old woman's body and sees Sue alive for the first time. Due to violation of the terms of use, consciousness was divided, and now both of them do not understand what is happening. Sue notices a syringe marked termination, so she attacks Elizabeth and beats her to death. In the evening, Sue arrives at the studio and soon feels an attack approaching. She locks herself in the toilet, tries to come to her senses and hopes for the best, because with Elizabeth dead, the liquid can no longer be obtained. Suddenly, 3 of Sue's teeth fall out, and in a panic, the girl runs home to once again create a better version of herself. Sue ignores the warning that the activator is disposable and loses consciousness after the injection. A minute later, a monster with 2 heads and eyes under its arm crawls out of her.